and welcome back to Indistinct Chatter. I'm Eliza, and I don't know about you, but every spring around this time, when it's crisp but warm, I get this weird craving. Like, I know it's getting warmer. I know the flowers are starting to bloom. I can smell them. I'm getting antsy for summer and all the sunshine. I mean, my farmer's tan has already begun. Like, it's very faint, but it has started. I don't know what it is, but around this time, I start wanting to watch horror movies, specifically classic slasher movies. Like, I want to rewatch Scream or Halloween or Friday the 13th. Like, give me all of the corny slasher movies. Something about late April and early May just makes me crave spooky season. And my algorithm knows this because while I was scrolling my day away, I came across something more than just Summerween. And I'll get into it, but first, we've got some news to talk about, okay? I've got a lot today, so brace yourself. So, a few episodes back, I mentioned Elon Musk and his AI chatbot Grok generating sexualized images of women and children. So, I have a quick update on that. Well, I don't really know if it's an update, maybe more of like an addition to the story, relating to the story. Maybe it's an update. I don't know. France has been investigating X or Twitter, whatever you want to call it, since January of last year. So it started around allegations that the platform's algorithm was being used to interfere in French politics. Then they expanded to include Holocaust denial content and the whole Grok deepfake situation. The Center for Countering Digital Hate found that Grok generated around 3 million sexualized images in 11 days. About 23,000 of those appeared to depict children in just 11 days. That's insane. So, French prosecutors summoned Elon to Paris on April 20th for what they called a voluntary interview. So, that means, they want to question him, but they can't technically force him to show up. So, Elon, former ex CEO Linda Yaccarino, I think that's how you say her name, and several other ex staff all got summoned. And Elon didn't go. He had actually previously called French authorities the R word on X, just, like in French. So that whole relationship's already not so great. The Paris prosecutor's office said his absence was, quote, not an obstacle to the continuation of the investigation. So, I mean, that's good, at least, I hope. Oh, we'll see. And separate from the deepfake investigation, there's been reporting that the whole Grok controversy may have been, at least in part, timed around a planned XAI stock market listing in June. Allegedly. Okay, allegedly. The theory being that flooding the zone with Grok content, even bad press, they say any press is good press, it would drive attention to the platform right before you want investors paying attention to it. So I can't confirm that that's true. It's all alleged. However, that's what's in the chatter. And while we're talking about AI being used to generate images of children and women without their consent, Apple and Google are actively promoting it. So, a nonprofit research group called the Tech Transparency Project put out a report this month showing that both the App Store and Google Play aren't just hosting apps that digitally remove clothing from photos of real women, they're running ads for them. These apps are sometimes called nudify apps or undress apps, and they've been downloaded nearly 500 million times. They've made over $122 million in revenue. And if that's not bad enough, some were even rated appropriate for minors. Apple has a policy against this. Are you sure about that? I guess they're just not enforcing it. After the report came out, Apple removed 15 apps. Aw, cute, thanks. Google said that they investigate when violations are reported. So, I mean, I don't know what they're up to, but I mean, 500 million downloads. There's no violations reported? Okay. Okay, Jan. Moving along, Mr. Beast, real name Jimmy Donaldson, biggest YouTuber in history, his company, Beast Industries, is being sued by a former employee. She joined the company in 2022 as head of Instagram. She was promoted twice within her first year and eventually rose to COO of the verticals division. She filed the lawsuit in federal court in North Carolina on April 22nd, and her allegations include years of sexual harassment from company leadership. Women were routinely talked over in meetings. She was told to shut up in a meeting. When she reported that a client was making unwanted advances towards her, she says that she was told that she should just be honored that the client was hitting on her. So she complained formally to HR in November of 2023, which, by the way, HR was run by Donaldson's mom. And she says that she was transferred out of her executive role into what she describes as a division where careers go to die. Then she got pregnant. She says that she was working in the labor and delivery room. A coworker messaged her that she shouldn't even be checking her messages after she tried to cancel a meeting by explaining she was, quote, actually in labor at the hospital as we speak. She told the AP, quote, I was still bleeding and I just had to show up. Less than 3 weeks after she returned from maternity leave, which only 3 weeks, okay, she was fired. Donaldson then hired a male employee to perform her former duties. Beast Industries calls her lawsuit fabricated for the sole purpose of sparking headlines and filed to have the case dismissed almost immediately. They also called her a media manipulator, a clout chaser, all these fun, buzzy words. So that's the vibe over there. Oh, and there's already a separate class action lawsuit against the company from contestants on Beast Games, which is his Amazon competition show. And they said that they were subjected to unsafe and unlawful conditions during filming. I've never actually watched, I've seen some previews, and the whole game seems pretty unsafe. And season 3 is apparently still in the works. So that's something. And speaking of terrible places to work, on April 6th, a 46-year-old worker at Amazon's PDX9 warehouse in Troutdale, Oregon, collapsed on the second floor. He was a tote runner, so hauling stacks of large plastic bins throughout the warehouse. And the first 911 call came in at 1:55 p.m. A worker told the dispatcher that the man appeared to be dead, had blood coming from his head, and was turning blue. A coworker who was CPR certified asked to help the woman already doing chest compressions, but her supervisor told her to turn around. Quote, it has to be management or safety team. Just turn around and not look. Let's get back to work. Could you imagine? Workers say they were kept in the building for over an hour after the 911 call. Amazon said the area was cordoned off and employees were sent home with pay shortly after EMS arrived. Some are saying they still have not been paid. Workers say that people were still clocking out 2 hours after he collapsed. One said that they got a text that same evening, basically just telling them to report to work as usual the next day. Amazon told reporters that their global injury rate has improved 43% since 2019. And just for a little context, PDX9 in Troutdale was called notoriously dangerous by the Portland Mercury back in 2019. And that was after a report came out that in 2018, more than a quarter of all workers there had a work related injury. Moving along, we all know what happened on Saturday. I'm going to break it down anyway. So, Saturday night, April 25th, the White House Correspondents' Dinner was happening. If you're not familiar, it's an annual black tie press gala in DC. It's basically the media's prom. This year, Trump showed up, which he hadn't done during his first term, and about 2,600 people were there. So Trump, Melania, JD Vance, the cabinet, hundreds of journalists, CBS White House correspondent Weijia Zhang was right on stage with the president as the dinner was happening. And around 8:30 p.m., shots were fired near the security checkpoint outside the ballroom. So the suspect is a 31-year-old named Cole Thomas Allen. He's a part-time teacher, a video game developer from Torrance, California. He's got a Caltech mechanical engineering degree, a master's in community science from Cal State Dominguez Hills. His employer named him Teacher of the Month in December of 2024. Allegedly, he'd been planning this since at least early April. He made his hotel reservation at the Washington Hilton on April 6th, the same hotel hosting the dinner. He traveled by train from Los Angeles to Chicago, then Chicago to DC, arriving April 23rd. On Saturday evening, before leaving his 10th floor room, he sent his family a note. It apologized to his parents, his colleagues, and his students. It said that he intended to target administration officials. It said, quote, "I don't expect forgiveness." Hotel surveillance footage shows him leaving his room dressed in all black, carrying a shotgun, a handgun, and several knives in a bag. He used an interior stairwell to basically bypass the heavily monitored sections of the hotel. Not sure why they weren't monitoring the stairwells. He then rushed the security checkpoint outside the ballroom. One Secret Service officer was hit in his bulletproof vest. Allen was taken down. He was arrested at the scene, and he has been charged with a few charges, attempting to assassinate the president, using a firearm during a crime of violence, and transporting a firearm across state lines with intent to commit a felony. So, the security is a hot topic, a heavily questioned hot topic. Like I said, I mean, the stairwells, why weren't they being monitored? There was also a reporter staying at the hotel who told outlets that nobody even looked at his luggage on Friday afternoon. His colleagues' bags also went unchecked as late as 5 p.m. the day before the dinner, which, by the way, the dinner is attended by the entire line of succession. That's insane. And that it's insane that security wasn't like to the roof. I don't even know. And then the online reaction is still popping off, man. It is all over the place. So within minutes of the first reports, the word staged was trending. It was trending on both sides of the political party spectrum. So, I mean, you could look at it as maybe bipartisan. You know, we love when the nation comes together, right? That's a positive twist. Um, but conspiracies instantly started spreading. So, like I said, the whole staged narrative that spread first and it spread immediately. And like I said, it came from two directions on the political spectrum, but kind of two different theories. So, from what I gather, coming from the right, some people on X claimed that the shooting was staged, uh, basically to support Trump's plan to construct a new White House ballroom. So, some context there if you're not sure. Trump has been pushing to build a massive new ballroom at the White House that seems like no one outside of this administration really wants. Historic preservationists have even been suing in order to stop it. After the shooting, Trump said publicly that the Washington Hilton was not a particularly secure building and tied it directly to why he needs his own venue. Senator Fetterman, a Democrat, posted that after witnessing the shooting firsthand, he was telling people to drop the TDS, aka Trump derangement syndrome, and build the damn White House ballroom. So people online connected those dots and then ran with it. Obviously, that's the first conspiracy. And then from the left, the theory was that Trump's approval ratings are suffering and a near assassination attempt generates sympathy. Representative Jasmine Crockett of Texas posted on Threads at almost 3 a.m. asking how Trump has had so many close calls and whether they might be fake. So she did attempt to kind of like walk that back a little bit, or she tried to, but the post was already seen. Everybody took screenshots, shared it, blah, blah, blah. And I will say, I think the ballroom theory is kind of becoming the most agreed upon theory. Then there's the whole Caroline Levitt clip. So before the dinner, White House press secretary Carolyn Levitt was on the Fox News red carpet and said, It'll be funny. It'll be entertaining. There will be some shots fired tonight. In hindsight, not great words to choose. But in her defense, I think she was just talking about the roast speeches, which in a roast, that's a completely normal phrase, but it got clipped and people just started circulating it as quote unquote evidence. However, as far as we know, it isn't evidence of anything. Some people try to say that she predicted it. Some people say she was in on it. Who knows? There were also claims that Alan had been seen in an IDF sweatshirt and that his name was heavily searched in Israel before the shooting. So I couldn't find either of those claims to be confirmed by anything credible, at least not at the time of this recording. If it is true, crazy. And then, of course, someone posted a time travel theory. Oh, they love the time travel theories. The post had 1.2 million views by Monday morning. And I'm not saying it's crazy, but I'm not saying it's not crazy either. And the thing about all of this, which is kind of the most important thing in my opinion, so all the collected theories, all the instant sleuthing, all the internet sleuths got together real quick and found so much information. They break down clip by clip of all the video footage, all the photos before and after, what everyone was saying before and after, every single tweet, every single Instagram post, all of that together. I just think it's important to note that staged, the word staged was trending before anyone even knew the suspect's name. And I think that is very telling about where we are as a nation. I don't think that people are stupid or just want to jump on a crazy train. So whether you believe this was a real assassination attempt or you believe it was staged in some way, to me, I think it is all just very much saying that trust in our government is gone and trust in the media is gone. When the first instinct after a shooting at a press dinner with 2,600 witnesses is to be that this is fake, I don't think that's it's, I don't think that's a conspiracy problem. I think that's very much a trust problem. Again, maybe not 2,600 people were in on it. Maybe only some of them were. Maybe if you believe in the whole staged part, I mean, it could be like one of those whodunit crime solving dinners where a few people are in on it and everybody else is just kind of there to witness it. Either way, real or not, trust problem. And remember what I talked about in previous episodes about the fourth turning? I feel like a lot of times it all comes back to that. Also, somebody was talking about an old Vanity Fair article from 2007 about America's horoscope. Very interesting read. It's a short one-page read. Search it, read it. It's a little spooky. Anyway, moving on. But still related to shootings, unfortunately. Sam Altman apologized publicly this week to the community of Tumbler Ridge in British Columbia, Canada. So in February, an 18-year-old killed her mother, her 11-year-old stepbrother, and 6 people at Tumbler Ridge Secondary School before taking her own life. It's one of the worst school shootings in Canadian history. And what came out afterward was the fact that OpenAI had flagged her ChatGPT account in June of last year, June of 2025, just 8 months before the shooting. And they flagged it for using the platform in furtherance of violent activities. The account was banned, and staff debated whether to alert law enforcement or not. Ultimately, they decided it didn't meet the threshold for an imminent, credible threat. So no one called anyone. Altman's letter, dated April 23rd, said, "I am deeply sorry that we did not alert law enforcement to the account that was banned in June." The premier of British Columbia, who shared the letter publicly, called the apology necessary and yet grossly insufficient, which I agree. This is also the second mass shooting linked to ChatGPT. Florida launched a criminal investigation into OpenAI after a student who carried out a shooting at Florida State University in April of last year had allegedly used ChatGPT in the planning process. So, two shootings attached to ChatGPT in just 1 year. Florida's attorney general is now subpoenaing OpenAI for records, and OpenAI has since updated its protocols for flagging accounts to law enforcement. And speaking of AI and MAGA, a college student in India built a fake AI influencer, a beautiful, flirtatious woman, specifically targeting older conservative men in the United States. Within a month, the account gained 10,000 followers, millions of views per reel, and thousands of dollars in revenue. Instagram removed the account after Wired investigated and reported on it. The student told Wired, this is a quote, not me. Democrats know that it's AI slop, so they don't engage as much. The MAGA crowd is made up of dumb people, like super dumb people, and they fall for it. That's his quote. And the data on who engages with fake AI accounts is something that researchers have been researching for a while. And the research kind of agrees. And the fact that someone built a whole operation around it from another country targeting American men and it worked for months. I don't know. It's a bit telling. Now, I'm really sorry, but I have to go back to some horrendous news. It is sprinkled with some betting because what is America if we can't bet on anything and everything, right? So on April 19th, a man killed 8 children in Shreveport, Louisiana, 7 of his own kids and their cousin, ranging in age from 1 to 14, before killing himself. Forbes published an article about it, and embedded in that article was something called Forbes Predict, a beta engagement product they launched in January where readers use tokens to predict news outcomes. The widget asked, will Congress pass new gun safety legislation before December 31st, 2026? Place your bet. They put that inside an article about 8 dead children. Readers were not happy. Forbes pulled the widget from that article and said that their guidelines are supposed to prevent this kind of thing, and it just slipped through. They said only 3% of their audience saw it before it was removed, blah, blah, blah. You guys need better QC. I don't know if they have real people or if they're just only relying on AI at this point, but that's bad. And only 3%? That didn't stop it from being spread all over the internet. Tisk tisk. And ultimately, this is what happens when you gamify news, right? The story just stops being about the tragedy and it just kind of becomes this numbers thing, and it really separates the humanity of it, to be honest. And it just turns it into a thing to bet on. And Forbes is not alone in this. Prediction markets like Polymarket and Kalshi have people betting on real world events all the time, including some very dark ones. However, most of those don't put the widget right next to the names of dead children. And on that note, that's the news update I have for you this week. Okay, let's move on to the whole Summerween vibes that I've been craving. The whole reason for this episode. And just so you don't think that I am a heartless freak, because this is kind of a weird transition, I don't crave real life bad, scary news. I'm just kind of craving like the fun lore and the Halloweeny vibes, okay? I'm not a monster. So I told you at the top of the episode that I get this craving for fall, basically, every spring slash early summer. And I think I found the reason. Or I just found something to add to the vibes. I'm not too sure. So Halloween has a sister or a twin, depending on how you look at it. She falls on April 30th, 2 days from now, depending on when you're listening to this. And she has been celebrated for over 1,000 years. Her name? Walpurgis Night. Woo. The holiday technically has a saint's name on it, so let's start there, shall we? And a quick disclaimer, there is a lot of Old English, German, and Celtic names here. I think some Swedish is sprinkled in. So I'm sorry if I butcher the pronunciation. Saint Valpurga was an English nun born around 710 AD in what is now Devonshire, England. She was educated by nuns from a very young age, became an abbess in Germany, and is historically credited with helping convert Germanic people to Christianity. She was celebrated for battling pest, rabies, and whooping cough, as well as witchcraft. So those were her enemies: pest, rabies, whooping cough, and witchcraft. She died on February 25th, 779 AD. She wasn't officially made a saint until May 1st, 870 AD, so a 91-year wait. Because her sainthood was declared on May 1st, her feast day got attached to that date, and the night before, April 30th, became St. Walpurgis Night. Now, May 1st was already a very significant date, long before the church got involved. But before I get into that, let me kind of explain to you the wheel of the year. So, the wheel of the year is the pagan calendar. It's 8 seasonal holidays called Sabbats that mark the turning points of the year, solstices, equinoxes, and the midpoints between them. You can kind of think of the year as having hinges, if that makes sense. Personally, I think the wheel is just easier to understand. It's kind of like the color wheel, you know what I'm saying? So, Halloween, or Samhain, which is the Celtic holiday it grew from, falls on October 31st. It marks the beginning of the dark half of the year, the end of harvest, the beginning of winter. And crucially, it's a time when the veil between the living world and the spirit world has believed to be at its thinnest. So spirits could cross into our world, witches could cross into theirs. Woo! Magic is heightened. Ooh! If you look directly across the wheel of the year, 6 months from October 31st, you land on April 30th, Walpurgis Night. Same thinning veil, same liminal quality, all around kind of the same sort of energy, just in springtime instead of fall. So, where Samhain marks the beginning of the dark half of the year, Walpurgis Night marks the beginning of the light half. So, they're kind of like mirrored images on the calendar, aka sister holidays. Now, back to May 1st being a big deal before the church got involved. Beltane, or Biwaltane, again, I don't know if I pronounced that right, is the Celtic festival that falls on May 1st, one of the 4 great fire festivals of the Gaelic year. It marked the beginning of summer, so cattle would be directed between bonfires for protection. There were rituals for fertility and a good harvest. It was, from what I can tell, a pretty bitchin' celebration. The night before, April 30th, was a little bit spookier though. The Germanic and Northern European peoples had their own version of this threshold night. And for them, it was specifically the night the witches flew. So, let me introduce you to the Brocken. The Brocken is the highest peak in the Harz Mountains in central Germany. It's surrounded by dense evergreen forests. It also has this meteorological phenomenon called the Brocken specter. Maybe you've heard of it. It's very magical. So, the Brocken specter is where the sun hits the fog just right, and it creates this massive shadow of whoever is standing there. Like, so if you're standing there, it's your shadow, only like massive. And it's surrounded by a glowing rainbow halo. To me, beautiful. But also, if you were a medieval German person standing on a misty mountain and you saw your own shadow blown up to a giant version of you surrounded by a halo of light, you would probably believe that something otherworldly was happening. At the summit, there are two rock formations, and bear with me on the pronunciation, okay? The Teufel how did I do? The Devil's Pulpit, and the Hexen Altar, the Witch's Altar. So the folklore says that on April 30th, witches from all over would travel to the Brocken to hold their great Sabbat before May Day. And the way they got there was a flying ointment, a salve that they rubbed onto their skin before the journey. Ooh, sounds wonderful, right? No. So the ingredients that historians have identified are belladonna, also called deadly nightshade, henbane, mandrake, hemlock, wolfsbane, all nightshade family plants, all containing compounds called tropane alkaloids. Atropine, hyoscyamine, scopolamine. How did I do on those pronunciations? I don't know. But these are definitely not mild herbs. Belladonna alone causes delirium, hallucinations, and a vivid physical sensation of flying. The hallucinations can last for days, and eating these plants would likely kill you. But practitioners apparently figured out that absorbed through fat and rubbed onto skin, the compounds entered the bloodstream at a level that caused intense hallucinations just without the fatal side effects. It's not a fatal dose. A 16th century physician named Andrea de Laguna, who was a physician to Pope Julius III, by the way, actually analyzed an ointment confiscated from a woman accused of witchcraft. He described it as green and containing hemlock, henbane, mandrake, and belladonna. A Dominican priest recorded watching a woman rub herself with an ointment and fall into a trance. When she woke up, she was completely convinced that she had flown to the Sabbat and danced with other witches. Like, she had very clear, very vivid memories of it. So, begs the question, were witches physically flying to a mountain in Germany? Probably not. Were they somewhere else entirely in their minds? Yeah, probably. So all of this seems spooky, right? Like what is the Sabbath actually for? Because back then, if it's witches, well, you know how they felt about witches back then. However, it's really not that spooky. It's actually quite beautiful. So the witches weren't flying to the Brocken to cause chaos. They're not putting spells on the villages. They're not doing all this crazy, scary stuff. They were there for a purpose, and Jacob Grimm, yes, the fairy tale guy, Grimm's Fairy Tales, you know him, he wrote in 1835, witches ride up the Brocken on the first day of May, and in 12 days must dance the snow away, then spring begins. Oh, it's so pretty. It's so cute. So, unlike here, where we depend on that damn groundhog to bring us spring, it was the witches who were the ones who drove out winter. Thank you, witches. Their Sabbath was just the mechanism by which the season changed. So basically, the thing that terrified medieval villagers was, in the framework of the mythology itself, the engine of renewal, a fresh start, bringing in good weather, blooming flowers. Ugh, stupid scaredy cats, scared for nothing. However, because a lot of people did fear all the hoopla, April 30th meant danger. Villagers lit bonfires to repel evil. They banged pots and pans. Remember when they did that during COVID? They also hung blessed foliage above their doors, ringing the church bells. It was basically this whole coordinated effort throughout the villages just to kind of like get through the night together, you know? The Danish Law Code of 1521 specifically named Walpurgis Night as the night witches were most active. That's right, a legal document acknowledging a witch holiday. Do we have one of those? Because if not, maybe we should. Anyway, the night burned so vividly in the European imagination that it made it into some of the most famous literature ever written. Goethe's Faust, one of the most important works in German literature, published in 1808, has an entire scene called Walpurgis Night. Again, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly. Walpurgis Night. Snacht? I don't know. The main character, Faust, and the devil, Mephistopheles. Guys, am I pronouncing these right? Please let me know. They travel to the Brocken together and they end up in the middle of the Great Sabbath. It's chaotic, it's sensual, it's a little strange. Basically, it's a fever dream on a witch mountain, and it became the defining literary image of the holiday for generations. It's essentially like a deal with the devil story. So, an aging scholar, he sells his soul to Mephistopheles in exchange for knowledge and experience. It's classic, right? Then you have Bram Stoker. You know him, you love him, the Dracula guy. He referenced Walpurgis Night in his short story Dracula's Guest. So, an Englishman is traveling toward Transylvania, but he stops in Munich on April 30th. The innkeeper explicitly warns him not to go out that night, but he goes out anyway because otherwise, what would the story be, right? And he ends up having not a very good night, a very bad night. The premise is that on Walpurgis Night, the line between the living and the dead disappears entirely. Edward Albee's play, Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf, named its second act Walpurgis Nacht. It's about two couples, it's one night, everything falls apart. Classic, complete chaos of rules dissolving, people saying things that they can't unsay, all that good stuff. And the Church of Satan was officially founded on Walpurgisnacht in 1966. Founder Anton LaVey chose the date intentionally, calling it one of the most significant dates in the Satanic calendar. Also, just a reminder back to the Satanic Panic episode. The Church of Satan doesn't actually worship the devil. For example, Satanic Colorado, shout out, encourage benevolence and empathy among all people. And I don't know if you have a Church of Satan or like a satanic temple in your area or a satanic congregation. But here in where I live, they are the ones who are always cleaning up the highways. They're always raising money for their community. They do a big thing for menstruation. They take donations for women who can't afford tampons and pads because of the pink tax, remember? They're good people. Look into it. Satanic Colorado. Okay, anyway. The Brocken itself, it still draws thousands of people every April 30th. Germany treats Walpurgis Night kind of like a second Halloween. So people dress as witches, demons, and hags. You gotta dress up as a hag. There are bonfires and fireworks, and the village of Thale in the Harz Mountains has a venue literally called the Hexentanzplatz. Again, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that, but it just means the witches dance floor. In Sweden, it's called Valborg. Big spring celebration, especially in university towns. In Finland, it's Vappu, I believe, a full blown spring carnival. So, safe to say the holiday is still booming across Northern and Central Europe. So, why do I crave spooky season in the spring? I am clearly not the only one who wants to celebrate Summerween. Like, I see so much stuff in my algorithm with hundreds of thousands of interactions. So I am not alone in this. I'm going to sound a little woo woo, but I love connecting things and finding patterns. You know, we all do. Remember, I talk about that a lot. So I feel like maybe this is the woo woo in me. I feel like maybe the ancient world knew that these threshold moments, like these thinning of the veils, all this other stuff, when one season kind of surrenders into the next season. I feel that they knew that this was a very powerful time. I mean, they built entire calendars around them and they lit fires to mark them. They told stories about them for centuries. So I feel like it makes sense that we still feel those same hinges that I was kind of trying to explain earlier. Do you know what I mean? Like almost sort of a natural instinct, an ancient one. Like, for example, I'm sorry to bring this up, but for example, I can't poop when I'm camping. And I wondered about that and I had done some digging. And that's a deep down survival instinct from way, way, way back when we were just little cave people. So maybe this is kind of a way, way, way back instinct in us or a connection in us to our ancestors or whatever. Do I sound crazy? Probably. But if you feel a little weird and a little witchy in late April, I say lean into it. Have yourself a summer ween. You can actually go online, look some stuff up, and you can find all these rituals to do on the 30th. I say try one out. And some are as simple as just lighting a candle or having a bonfire. And also, since this is the season, the Summerween season, if you want a perfect Summerween movie, I suggest Friday the 13th. That's the move. It's got a camp setting, summer vacation, a lake, a scary masked man. Ooh, plus, then you'll be freshened up for the Crystal Lake prequel series that is coming to Peacock this winter. Also, I just watched Scream 7. Finally, they brought back a lot of OGs. Matthew Lillard. Mm. And Scream 8 is officially in development. And that's all I have for you guys this week. We covered a lot of crazy news. And if you didn't know, now you know a little about Walpurgis Night, the flying ointment, which please do not make it at home, okay? I gave you the ingredients, but don't make it. I don't know if you can even buy some of those things. Don't make it. We also learned about the witches of the Brocken, and maybe we discovered why our brains in April get a little bit Halloweeny and how that might be connected to our ancient history. I had fun. As always, if this episode did anything for you, if it made you laugh, made you mad, made you look something up, please rate it, review it, share it with a friend, leave a comment. I say this all the time, but that stuff really truly means so much more than most people realize for a little solo show like mine. You can also find me on Instagram at indistinct.pod or at Eliza Hollister. Why don't you go ahead and send me your Walpurgis Night plans if you've got some, or send me something weird that you think I might find interesting. My DMs are open. They are empty. But we will chat next week. Love ya. Love you. Bye.